Good Friday to you. I hope you have a great weekend ahead. Cleveland Browns drafted Spencer Fano in the first round, number 9 overall, after trading down, picking up an extra couple of picks from the KC Chiefs, who are an easy mark. And they got their man, Spencer Fano, won the Outland Trophy. If you're listening on AM 1230 in Salt Lake City, go Utes. We're very excited about that. He's going to be left tackle. I think the last Brown to have won the Outland Trophy was Hall of Famer Joe Thomas. So we'd like a repeat of that. Joe Thomas was drafted 20 years ago. So time for another era, the Spencer Fano era. Also picked up Kevin Concepcion from Texas A&M. Speedy, fast, elusive. Returns punts as well. And we have 9 more picks today, so I'll be covering the... No, I'm not going to cover the draft. I'll cover the news. Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner are going back to Islamabad. I don't know why, given the presser we had at the Pentagon this morning. Let's start there. Secretary Hegseth, cut number 6 on the blockade going global.
President Trump said it again yesterday. We have all the time in the world, and we're not anxious for a deal. And I hear him say it every day in private as well. Iran knows that they still have an open window to choose wisely. As we said previously, choose wisely at the negotiating table. All they have to do is abandon a nuclear weapon in meaningful and verifiable ways, or instead they can watch their regime's fragile economic state collapse under the unrelenting pressure of American power. A blockade as long as it takes, whatever President Trump decides. Because the bottom line remains the bottom line. Iran will never get a nuclear bomb. The choice is theirs, but with this blockade, the clock is not on their side. Moreover, President Trump has authorized the United States Navy to destroy any Iranian fast boats that attempt to put mines in the water or disrupt passage through the Strait of Hormuz, to shoot and kill. Our commanders have clear rules of engagement. If Iran is putting mines in the water or otherwise threatening American commercial shipping or American forces, we will shoot to destroy. No hesitation, just like the drug boats in the Caribbean.
You know, I think that even the Iranians have got to understand we know how to blow up the speedboats, and we'll see who gets to drive, and people who want to be martyrs. Secretary Hegseth had this to say about Iran, cut number 3.
The IRGC specifically has been reduced to a gang of pirates with a flag. They cloak their aggression in slogans, but the world now sees them for what they are, criminals on the high seas. They don't control anything. They're acting like pirates, acting like terrorists. They're the ones who lay indiscriminate mines, who shoot at random ships, who killed 45,000 of their own people, innocent protesters in the course of weeks. Their own people. They are the bad actors. The vessels that the Iranians
Talking more
seized...
about this with Matt Continetti, Eli Lake, Ben Domenech, but I do want to play Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. Here he is on the blockade, cut number 7.
First, as I mentioned, U.S. Central Command continues to maintain a strict blockade on all the ports. We're enforcing the blockade across the board against any ship of any nationality that is transiting to or from an Iranian port or territory. We're closely tracking vessels of interest headed towards Iran and those moving away from Iran that were outside the blockade area when this blockade was ordered. And as everyone saw this past weekend, we're prepared and postured to intercept them. As of this morning, 34 ships have met the U.S. blockade and made the wise choice to turn around. One ship did not, and that ship was the motor vessel Tuska. Over several hours this past Sunday, April 19th, the U.S. conducted maritime interdiction operations against the Tuska, whose crew attempted to breach the blockade line. The Tuska is a large container ship, about 965 feet long, or about the same size as a United States Navy aircraft carrier, and over 100 feet wide. The operation began about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time when the United States Navy destroyer approached her. and the crew and the vessel ignored warnings. And I've described how the destroyer force is operating in the area prior. Upon intercept and coming within visual range, American forces began to issue several clear and unambiguous warnings and inform the vessel and their crew that they were in a violation of the U.S. blockade and directed the ship to turn around. Over a 6-hour period, the vessel and her crew repeatedly ignored U.S. warnings. And then the U.S. Navy destroyer executed a series of pre-planned, carefully calibrated escalation options, including firing 5 warning shots. The vessel and her crew continued to ignore warnings. And after exhausting all other measures, CENTCOM authorized disabling fire against the Tuska. U.S. sailors warned the crew of the Tuska to abandon the engine room, and at approximately 9 a.m. Eastern Time, the destroyer disabled the Tuska's engine by firing 9 inert rounds from the destroyer's Mark 45 5-inch guns precisely into the engine room and engine space on board the Tuska. Not surprisingly, the vessel then reported issues with their engine, went dead in the water, and began to comply with U.S. directions and orders. At 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, CENTCOM ordered United States Marines to seize the ship. Via helicopters, U.S. Marines maneuvered quickly to the disabled ship, boarded her from fast ropes via helicopter infiltration methods, and took custody of the ship. The ship and her crew remain safe in U.S. custody today. Let me now...
We also have been grabbing tankers. The blockade didn't go into effect until about 4 weeks of the war, and a bunch of tankers had left, and they're on the high seas full of sanctioned oil, basically pirated ships. Here's what the chairman said about the takeover of one of the tankers earlier this week, cut number 11.
On Monday, April 20th, U.S. Indo-PACOM forces, in support of a Department of Justice request, interdicted the motor tanker Tiffany, which was transporting sanctioned Iranian oil. The Tiffany is a very large crude tanker, VLCC for short, and is also about the size of a U.S. aircraft carrier and capable of transporting approximately 2 million barrels of oil. At approximately 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. military forces and law enforcement forces also went to the ship via rotary wing platforms, fast-roped onto her deck, and secured her. After the ship was secured, a U.S. Navy control team embarked aboard the Tiffany, and assumed control of the ship at 4 a.m. Eastern Time on April 21st. A Navy control team is comprised of sailors led by a boarding officer that assumes control of a seized ship in order to secure the crew, the cargo, and the vessel. And disposition of that first vessel is still pending. The next interdiction occurred on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, 22 April, when Indo-PACOM conducted yet another interdiction, again at the request of the U.S. Department of Justice. This time, the stateless motor tanker Majestic X, also known as the Ponix, also in the Indian Ocean. This is again a VLCC, or very large crude tanker. At approximately 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S. forces began the interdiction, again using rotary wing assets to get to the ship, got on board, and secured the bridge. Both ships, the Tiffany, the Majestic X, and their crews remain in U.S. custody. And we will continue to conduct similar maritime interdiction actions and activities in the Pacific and Indian Oceans against Iranian ships and vessels of the Dark Fleet.
So I don't think you ought to go there if you're in the Dark Fleet. I do think you ought to use Relief Factor if you're getting ready for the weekend. I did 8 miles this morning, beautiful day inside the Beltway. So I went a little bit farther because I'm driving tomorrow, Grandkids Day, and therefore I won't be out doing my long run. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega, and you know what? It's as easy as that. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you see me take it in the first hour of every program. I feel great today. I feel great all weekend long. And I hope that you will at least give it a try. The starter pack is $19.95. That's less than $1 a day for a 3-week supply. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Ask for the starter pack, $19.95. 3 packets a day for the first week. 2 packets a day the second week. Then you're like me, a packet a day, and I've been doing it for 13 and a half years. Relief Factor really does work. Or go find the starter pack, $19.95, over at their website, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Eli Lake is with the Free Press. He is the host of the Breaking History podcast. And he, like me, are both fixated on Iran. Eli, the Carolyn Leavitt announced today that Special Envoys Witkoff and Kushner are going back to Islamabad. I feel bad for those guys. I don't think anything good's going to come out of that. I don't think Vahidi is going to throw in his cards. He's a hardcore old guard, fought in the big war 80 to 88. Do you think there's any progress to be made here?
I do think that the regime is facing economic collapse, and the blockade of the blockade is probably going to have an effect. So I think that right there, but I don't think I don't think they're feeling that pressure yet. And I think you're correct that Vahidi represents somebody who, he was part of Vahidi back in the day was, during that Iran-Iraq war, he was part of the faction that didn't want to take the deal with Saddam Hussein when Khomeini said it was like drinking the chalice of poison. He represented the people who wanted to continue fighting that war, which was paid a horrible toll on the Iranians. So I would not expect anything like that to come from him. But on the other hand, the way it was described to me by people in terms of understanding how the leadership works, Vahidi does not have the loyalty, or does not necessarily have the command, or he does have the command, but doesn't have the loyalty of the entire Revolutionary Guard Corps. He is rather the strongest chieftain in that group. So there are other rivals to him, but right now that he is like sort of on this 5-person council, he's clearly the real power in Iran right now. I don't think you're going to see much yet. But that might change as the economic conditions worsen, as they understand the full extent of their military defeat. And even if nothing happens, I just think that the United States has plenty of military options to open the Strait of Hormuz. That, and getting the remaining missiles and other things that were on the target list, are military objectives. I think that's eminently doable. I think the United States remains in a really good position.
So, Eli, I talked to a senior official from Trump 1 today, and not Trump 2, not in now. And he told me a nuclear program requires 3 things: expertise, and the Iranians have at least the muscle memory of expertise, though they've lost a couple dozen of their top scientists. The technology that you can buy on the open market, and number 3, money and time. Money and time. We have seized 3 of their tankers at sea this month. I played General Kane. That's 2 million barrels of oil a grab, and we've done it 3 times at sea. Forget the cargo ship, who knows what was in it, but we got the oil. They're going to run out of oil. The Hewitt option is this: Witkoff and Kushner give them a list of the oil facilities in Iraq, 1 through 30, and say, we're going to take out 1 of these each day, and we're going to end with Kart Island being in rubble if you do not give us the highly enriched uranium and inspection rights at Pickaxe Mountain and other places, because we're not going to leave you with any money. What do you think about that? Just lay it out. Here's our target list. You can't stop us. They're all going to be rubble. You will have no oil.
Well, right now, I think if it's Vahidi calling the shots, they probably would not accept it, because I think they're almost kind of living in. I think Vahidi represents one of the true believers. But again, part of the strategy for something like that, which I think is actually pretty smart, is that, are we sure that everybody around Vahidi wants to make that same decision?
Exactly.
And that's the key, is that, the fracturing in that respect is a good thing. I never understood the argument that was made by some of the critics of the war after the initial decapitation strikes. It says, now you've got an even more hardline regime. They've always been hardliners, as you know. And
they killed 40,000 people. They killed 40,000 people in January.
Right. Yeah. So the idea that, we can't risk it because the next person might be even worse. they're all in the category of horrible. So, I mean, at this point, I'm looking forward to the fracturing, and I think that there will be more of it. And at some point, I think there's going to be a lot of different opportunities. And remember, they still haven't turned the internet back on. The Iranian people are going to, enter into this at some point. I would love it if there were things that we could start maybe doing to try to turn back on the internet or provide alternatives. I think that technology exists, and I don't exactly understand why that hasn't happened yet. But
Eli, you have great
right
sources
now,
in both.
Yeah.
You've got sources in Israel and UAE. Why
Yeah.
is the UAE not building a big pipeline from the UAE to Israel so that they don't have to ship anything? Why? This ought to be like
that's a great
Halliburton
question. I
Central.
don't have an answer. I should say, great question. I don't have an answer for that right now. But one issue is, I think that if you build a pipeline, that's another target. And the Iranians have the drones, and maybe they don't have the drone defense. But the UAE has been in the fight. I can tell you that, and I can also say that I don't necessarily. I mean, we'll see what happens with the Saudis. The Saudis are right now, very connected to the Pakistanis who are hosting the negotiations, and their outreach to Turkey, which I think is really troubling right now. But I think the Emiratis, and I think at least part of the Saudi royal family, at least, they're in a new strategic reality after this war, and there will be no option for the Iranians to sort of rebuild that relationship until there's regime change. So that's another strategic loss for Iran in this conflict.
I note as well, the Libyans upped their oil production in 1 month by 1 million barrels a day. And so there are other places around the world to get oil. It's not as cheap, but we're not going to be at $90 a barrel. We're going to get back to 75, which is more than 60, but the world can absorb that. They can't absorb a nuclear Iran. And so when you get rid of the Trump distortion effect and the Netanyahu distortion effect, isn't this clearly a win for the world?
I'm so glad you put it like that, Hugh. It's become so frustrating to me. Even if the Iranians manage for a period of time to hold on to the Strait of Hormuz, that is, we've talked about before, a depreciating asset, because people will find alternatives to the Strait of Hormuz and alternative sources. But the most important thing is, weighed against demolishing the vast majority of Iran's nuclear program, its defense industry, the conventional ballistic missile shield that Rubio has talked about, weighed against all of that, is it worth it? Yes, because the whole reason for this entire war has been to stop these fanatics from getting a nuclear weapon. And in theory, they could start again, but we just wiped away 30 years and $500 billion worth of investment. And that is a military accomplishment. And
it's a strategic accomplishment.
Absolutely a strategic accomplishment. And again, someone can say, yeah, theoretically, they're going to be more determined than ever to rebuild it. To which I say, then the United States and Israel will be determined to knock that out as well.
Theoretically, if we had gone, if we had gone after Hitler in 1937 or 38 when he took Sudetenland or Austria on the Anschluss, or even when he took over the Ruhr, theoretically that might have led to a lot of heartburn, but we wouldn't have had the Third Reich. I really don't understand. Yeah. It's the Trump distortion effect. The Netanyahu, last word to you. Isn't that what it is? Yeah. The reason we can't see this?
I think some of it's the Trump distortion effect. I think the other part of it is that we just have a generation of people, of Western elites, that are completely disconnected from the military. I did not serve, but when the Iraq War was going on, I went to Iraq several times and served with Americans there. That was something that was an invaluable experience for me, but so many have no idea what it means to be in the military, what it means to fight a war.
Amen to that. Eli Lake, we're looking for the breaking history. I got a lot of driving to do this weekend. And whatever you write in the Free Press. Thank you, Eli. Matt Continetti is here for his Friday Week in Review with me. Matt, of course, Free Expressions columnist at the Wall Street Journal, head of domestic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute, and Virginia elections analyst. First question, Matt, given your Free Expressions column in the Journal today, who has freer elections, Iran or Virginians after this map goes into effect?
Well, I would say that the Republicans in Virginia won't be feeling very enfranchised after this map goes into effect, and certainly the population of Iran is not enfranchised. So it's a hard call,
Well, a
Hugh.
very
It's a
good
hard call.
call.
I'll still vote with America in the end, but for freedom. But nonetheless, this Virginia map is depressing to all those who believe in fair representation, because that's what really happened. You had a Virginia map that was 6-5 Democrat Republican, basically in line with the share of the vote that each party gets every 4 years. Trump won about 46% of the vote last election in 2024. And now you're going to a 10-1 Democrat Republican map, which means that the 46% of Republicans in the state of Virginia will have one representative in Congress. That is the definition of unfairness.
Now, Matt, there are no Republicans in Massachusetts. They're only 34% voted for President Trump in 2024. I've always said redistricting done by the legislature, it's a political mischief game. Just don't use race, and I'm okay with it. But the Virginians passed a constitutional amendment to prohibit it in the state. It's up to the states to decide. And basically, the Virginia legislature just rolled over it. I heard Ken Cuccinelli, former Attorney General of Virginia, sounding optimistic with Jake Tapper, but I'm not, because this is a very radical legislature in Richmond. I think they'll punish the state Supreme Court if they reverse the referendum. Do you have much hope for the court case?
I think the only glimmer of hope I can see in the Supreme Court is that what the vote on Tuesday showed you is that this is not open and shut. I mean, this was a close vote, about 51-48, maybe 52-48, 3 or 4 points. The no vote, that is rejecting this unfair map, was higher than Republicans earned in last year's gubernatorial election. It was higher than President Trump earned in 2024 in the state of Virginia. And there might be some justices on the state Supreme Court who look at that and say, you know what, if we do overturn the map because the process violated all of these constitutional and statutory requirements, the blowback from the voters won't be that much. But as you say, they're going to be worried about the blowback from the radical Democrats who now are in charge in Richmond, Virginia. And I think in the end, they'll be more afraid of the politicians than actual Virginia voters when they decide whether or not to uphold this new and unfair map.
Now, Ron DeSantis has called a special session. There are 28 congressional districts, 20 are held by Republicans, 8 by Democrats. I think you could go to ChatGPT and Grok and say, draw me a map that gets me 28 Republicans, and then have them both check each other's work, and that would hold up the constitutional muster if the Supreme Court throws out Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, as is expected later this month. Do you want DeSantis to do that, or do you want someone to call a halt to this?
Well, I think after the Virginia vote, Governor DeSantis can say, look, he's simply continuing a process and redistricting Florida, if he can find a way to do it and the legislature approves of it, is the necessary response to what's happening in Virginia. Unfortunately, we're down this path now where each party is retaliating against each other. If it doesn't happen in Florida, and if the Supreme Court decision you mentioned doesn't go the way many expect it to, which is to say that these majority-minority districts are misreadings or violations of the Voting Rights Act, well then, paradoxically, the Democrats could come out ahead slightly from this gerrymandering war we've been having. So I think that means that DeSantis should try to go to get some more seats out of the Florida state delegation. But I will say this, though. All of these gerrymanders, including the one in Virginia, you know, they are very susceptible to wave elections that go in a different direction.
Oh, yeah.
And what we're seeing right now, you know, on the Republican states is, you know, the fact is the Republicans have lost a lot of support from Hispanic voters. And that means that even these gerrymanders could go and end up electing Democrats. The same thing, by the way, could happen, God forbid, if we have a Democratic president in 2030 and a midterm election goes against that president and elects a lot of Republicans. Well, then these districts that the Virginia state Democrats have gerrymandered, that could blow up in their face as well. So it's a very dangerous game with the gerrymanders. And unfortunately, we're in this race to the bottom.
And the long game is that the census is going to reward the South in 2032 with 12 to 15 new CDs, and that means the Democrats are really screwed. I'm kind of zen about this because we're going to lose the House anyway. It's hypothetical time. You have to actually listen to the Big Weekend pod to hear this part. Matt, the vice president is in the pole position for the Republican nomination in 2028. There's no denying it. However, if there was sort of a disqualification round where everybody not named Vance got in there and did the debate, and you could see Glenn Youngkin, and you could see Doug Ducey, and you could see Mike Pompeo, and you might see Ron DeSantis. If they could come up with one person to run against JD, who would your money be on, JD or that one person? And I'm taking Rubio off the board.
Okay, so now you've put me in the position of the liberal theorist John Rawls. We have to have a veil of ignorance, right, on
Yes.
this. And it would create this new situation where it was JD against one Republican challenger for the 2028 nomination. I think the biggest threat to JD, not without Rubio in there, would probably be someone like Glenn Youngkin, someone with that political profile, Southern, someone who can also make a case to independents and suburbanites, and someone who can draw distinctions between JD and JD's version of conservatism and kind of the earlier forms of conservatism, and also, by the way, some Trump conservative principles. And as I'm talking right now, I said someone like Glenn Youngkin, but actually the clearest contrast in a lot of ways, and would fit my geographic requirement as well, would be Ted Cruz, who of course came in second to President Trump in 2016. So yeah, I might have to say Cruz in the end.
But they would have to consolidate down to one, wouldn't they? They'd have to get in a room and flip and take short straw wins or short straw loses.
And that was, as you well know, Hugh, that was the problem in 2016. That was the reason Ted Cruz couldn't cross the finish line in first place in 2016 against President Trump, was because he was still contending with Rubio and with John Kasich even toward the end there.
So I don't know if you ever read Axelrod's memoir, David Axelrod's Believer. Did you? True Believer? It might be Believer.
Yeah,
it's a fabulous book, and he believes in the theory of the personality most unlike the one that is in the White House. Among the Republicans, which personality is most unlike Donald Trump who might run for the presidency?
I think Youngkin is probably the most different from Trump in personality. He has no sharp edges. He always is trying to reach consensus, avoid conflict. It's interesting that opposite effect that Axelrod talks about. The first time I heard of it was from Chris Matthews, the hardball anchor, who always said that
we
Americans
all steal from each other.
We all steal from each other. Americans, Matthews told me, always elect for the person that they did, unlike the previous occupant. But I never really thought of it in terms of primaries before, Hugh. And I actually think in the primary, what Republicans are going to want is someone to carry on the Trump agenda, but to be able to do so in a way that can secure another term for the Republicans in the White House, knowing the dangers that this country faces from a radical left Democratic Party.
Amen. Matt Continetti, as I am most Fridays. He is the head of domestic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute. He's also the free expressions columnist at the Wall Street Journal and the Thursday panelist. I listened to him yesterday on the Commentary podcast. So, Matt, as I was listening to your podcast, and J-Pod goes back and forth on where he is on the war, I think we've won the war decidedly. I think it's a strategic win that will follow Trump through history. But I would end it this way, the Hewitt plan. Witkoff and Kushner are on their way to Islamabad right now. I'd have a piece of paper, a target sheet, non-exclusive. Just day one, we're going to hit this oil facility. Day two, we're going to hit this one. Day three, all the way down to, Karg Island will be the last day, and we'll destroy that. We'll level that. We're not going to occupy it. We're already picking up their tankers. We picked up 3 of their tankers this week. That's about 6 million barrels of oil. So that's a $600 million loss. They need money to build nukes. And I would let them decide. Do you want an oil industry or do you want the nuke? What do you think of the Hewitt plan?
I think it's a good plan. It's very interesting to me that J.D. Vance is not headed toward Islamabad this weekend. Of course, the Iranians didn't want to continue talking with Kushner and Witkoff because Kushner and Witkoff have been very resistant to the Iranian attempt to draw out these negotiations, to gain financial benefit before they have to deliver on any of their promises. And so here we're going to have, I think, another round of kabuki conversations between Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, and then Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. So the question is, what will happen then? The worst thing that could happen is we agree to end the blockade and give sanctions relief to the Iranians without any real deliverables on their part. I don't think that's going to happen. So then you have two alternatives. You have the resumption of the military campaign following that excellent Hewitt target list. I'd like to see that list. I bet it's a great list. Or you have the status quo. And either policy, resuming the military campaign certainly, but also the current policy, the status quo policy, will exact increasing pressure on the Iranian regime. And that's what we need to continue to do. We've made great strides, accomplished much, but the final effort needs to be in depriving this regime of its financial lines of support and then showing that the United States Navy, the three carrier groups we now have in the region, can take the lead, clear the Strait of Hormuz, and create a new lane of escort traffic so that it's never held hostage by this terrorist regime again. That, I think,
that raises an interesting question. You're right. By the way, the target list, best list, never been a better list. I want to know something.
Perfect list.
Perfect list. Gold-plated list. I want to ask about another one of your colleagues at AEI. Did you ever see the movie Big with Tom Hanks? Everyone has. I'm just assuming you have. Have you seen Big?
Many times. It's a classic.
Okay. So you know the fortune teller in the booth that knows exactly what's going to happen?
Yes.
All right. That's Yuval Levin. Would you walk by and put a coin in the machine and ask Yuval Levin why we don't have pipelines from UAE to Haifa already under construction? Because it just seems to me pipelines are the answer.
You know, Hugh, that might be the one question that Yuval Levin cannot answer, and probably wouldn't want to. Yeah, I think it's obvious. I think it's amazing that the world allowed itself to be put into this situation. 50 years of an approach to the Iranian regime that was de-escalatory. That was, we would just want to avoid conflict with the Iranian regime. We want to keep the oil flowing. We'll put, slightly under 20% of the global oil supply through the Strait of Hormuz. We'll put 20% of the world's fertilizer supply through the Strait of Hormuz. Who cares? Well, now we see why that was a huge strategic mistake. And I think it's important that the world knows that. So, yes, why is this pipeline not there? It's because people were invested in the status quo of allowing Iran to continue to terrorize the world, to continue its progress toward a nuclear weapon, to continue its ICBM program. And it's finally this president, President Trump, who said enough is enough. And that means short-term pain, but the long-term gain of disarming the Iranian regime, ending its nuclear program, and setting the conditions for its eventual collapse will be historic.
Oh, it's a strategic win. But I think you underestimate Yuval. I've never met him, which is why I mispronounced his last name. But I still think you ought to ask him the second question that I'd like to know. Are there no roads? Are there no tanker trucks? Are there no fertilizer trucks that can move the fertilizer to a Mediterranean port? Because it is all connected. It's not like you don't have to go over the strait to deliver fertilizer to the world.
No, there are alternatives, and I think it's a matter of time of repricing. I think a lot of the repricing of the energy supply is already being done, some of the other commodities that go through the strait. But the fundamental for me, Hugh, is we cannot allow hostile regimes to control the world's naval choke points.
Agreed.
And that includes the Gulf of Aden, that the Houthis have been terrorizing. That includes the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf, that Iran has shown it doesn't care whether it blows up ships, commercial vessels, it terrorizes them. And it also includes the Taiwan Strait and the Strait of Malacca. And so this is a wake-up call.
Do you mind if we impoverish the Iranian people? I didn't want to do it, but if you do destroy their oil infrastructure, and it's going to be destroyed simply because they're at capacity for storage right now, and when you stop pumping, as the president tried to explain in his Trumpian way, it screws up the whole system. The plumbing gets broken. Do you worry about impoverishing the Iranian people? They're not getting the money anyway, so I don't worry about that. Did we lose Matt?
I'm here now.
We lost. Oh, you're back. You got 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm back.
Do you worry?
1 minute. America didn't impoverish the Iranian people. The Iranian government did. And that's the truth. And that's why we can continue to exert this maximum pressure, the blockade, interdict, the veins of the IRGC economically, and put the pressure on the regime so that the Iranian people have a new chance for a new future and a more prosperous one as well.
Who should get the money from the tankers? We did take 3 tankers. Victims of Iranian terror or the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? Oh, we lost them again. That's because we have a thunderstorm, and Northern Virginia has the infrastructure of southwestern Iran. Browns have 3 picks tonight in the second day of the draft. I personally would like 2 guards and a wide receiver, or maybe a tackle and a guard and a wide receiver. I'm not a very flashy drafter. Browns in the trenches. Let's go back to Secretary Hegseth this morning at the Pentagon, cut number 4.
Unlike the endless wars of the past that dragged on for years and for decades with little to show for it, Operation Epic Fury has delivered a decisive military result in just weeks. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, as the president has pointed out, all took years, decades. Vague missions, shifting sands, little to show for it. Operation Epic Fury has been laser focused from the very start, as I've said to all of you. Clear mission objectives, and ultimately Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. It's a bold and dangerous mission, a gift to the world, historic, courtesy of a bold and historic president. That mission continues today.
He's right. Cut number 5, though, he talks about the blockade.
As part of that effort, the United States has imposed an ironclad blockade that grows more powerful by the day. From the Gulf of Oman to the open oceans, our Navy is enforcing this blockade without hesitation or apology. Now, as usual, there's a lot of false information out there. I'll say this, every ship that the U.S. believes meets our criteria, either Iranian ships or to and from Iranian ports, has been turned around. As of this morning, 34 total.
Smart choice. Hope everyone in the fleet doesn't try and run that blockade, and I hope we sweep up every tanker on the high seas. Let me tell you to mark your calendar for April 30th for the Story of Everything, which is coming to theaters nationwide April 30th through May 6th. The Story of Everything.film is where you go to learn about it. It is a film about why you cannot know anything about the universe, any kind of detail about the cosmos, and not conclude that there is an intelligent designer behind it. Every coefficient is so precise. Everything has to be in balance that is in balance. Everything defies astronomical odds of actually coming into being, but it has, and it began with the Big Bang at a point in time, at a particular point in time, when an intelligent being, I happen to think that being is God the Father, decided, let there be light, and boom, there was light in an expanding universe. But don't believe me, believe the scientists on film in the Story of Everything.film. And get your tickets in advance. Those 600 theaters will sell out. I do want you to know, high quality production. Dolby sound, Dolby film, hundreds if not thousands of shots that are extraordinary. I've seen the preview. We show you a little bit on the Salem News Channel every time I talk about the Story of Everything. If you did not hear my interview with Dr. Stephen Meyer, who is with the Discovery Institute, it's over at my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt and YouTube. But go and reserve your tickets for the Story of Everything at thestoryoferything.film. Thestoryoferything.film. Ben Domenech is in the house. He of the host of the Big Ben podcast, Fox News contributor. and the editor of the opinion pages at the Daily Wire. Ben, I wanted to ask you about that. When the late Fred Hyatt, who hired me at the Post, was the poobah of the opinion pages at the Post, that was his title, editor of the opinion pages. But we don't have pages at the Daily Wire. What do we call you at the Daily Wire?
You can call me head of opinion. How about that?
Head of opinion.
But yes, I completely understand. No, there's one of the advantages I think, and really I actually miss it of the old newspaper pages, is that they kept your writers to a particular count. You have to meet that count in order to actually do quality work, and I think that it's one of the things that, frankly, I miss about the original version of X. You did much better work when you were confined to an in their case, artificial limit. But when it comes to
sometimes I'll write 1,000 words on X Pen and it'll get 1 million views because it's serious. And Mark Dubowitz did one on Iran last night that deserves 10 million views.
I read that. Yes.
And
but I just think that one of the things that is good about restrictions when it comes to writing is that far too many writers just are unwilling to kill their darlings. They just they hold on to every word as if it's a pearl sent from on high. And
my friend Mike Duffy used to say about my columns that I wrote everything twice. They were fine columns, but I said the same thing twice every time. He was right. So we'll just call you the Commissar of Commentary at the Daily Wire.
Sounds wonderful. I accept that.
Now, I will not, however, call you a draft analyst. I listened to the Big Ben podcast this week. Not only did Lucas nail Sonny Styles at 7, you actually thought Carnell Tate might drop there. So that means you don't know anything about Ohio State football. I was hoping he would drop to 6.
No, I was hoping that he would drop there. Of course he didn't drop there because everybody else understood how great of a player that he is.
He is.
But Sonny Styles, I mean, I'm not going to complain about that at all.
You should be very excited.
Yes.
You're very excited. What we got last year from
the
UCLA
played
and
linebacker for 1 year, and he was arguably the best one in college football. So
we had Schlesinger last year. You got Styles this year. It turns an entire defense around to have a guy in the middle.
Have had a great draft, though. I mean,
I like Spencer Fano. Last time we drafted an Outland Trophy winner was 2006 in Joe Thomas. So, don't you really want to just do sports radio once a week with me? We could just do sports radio once a week.
I would be more than happy to do that, Hugh. It would actually be. I mean, the funny thing about talking to the folks who are, I'm sure you do the same thing. The folks who are off air at Fox News is that I went in to do a commentary with John Roberts this week. And every conversation that we had running up to the actual segment, which was not about sports, was about who should be drafted and where. So
now, does John hang on to his Canadian roots and root for the CFL, or is he?
So I can talk to him about the CFL and I can talk to him about hockey, but he pays zero attention to the NFL.
Okay, and I have no knowledge about hockey, so I got to read it. I know a little bit about the CFL. Hey, let's go to the Hewitt plan for finishing the war. I think this is a big victory, and that history will recognize it as a big victory, that the Trump distortion effect and the Netanyahu distortion effect are making smart people say stupid things. But I'd like to bring it to an end. And so my plan is, Woodcock and Kushner on a plane to Islamabad. I hope they have a piece of paper on it with 30 targets, day 1 through 30, and they're all oil targets. And they simply, on day 1, they're not exclusionary. We can hit other stuff like launchers and missiles and stuff. But day 1, we're going to hit this oil field, day 2, this, day 3. And it's going to end with Karg Island on day 30. We're going to level it. And you're going to be poor for a generation. And that's what you get for screwing around. So pick your time. What do you make of the Hewitt plan?
So you're going to make them an offer they can't refuse.
Yeah, this is my offer. Nothing but pain.
Yes, yeah. So look, I hope that they're smart enough to do that. Here's the thing that I think, you need, and you talk to a lot more politicians than I do. I got a chance to talk to some of these Capitol Hill folks this week when I was doing a Wired and Live segment that I swung into off the bench because Cabot Phillips was sick. But the thing was that was interesting to me was I don't think these guys know how to talk about this. I don't think they're used to talking about it. Remember last week when you were talking about them not being able to vocalize been achieved during this operation or anything associated with that. I think that you need to be addressing that to Mike Johnson needs to invite you to come and talk to the conference on that, because those guys definitely don't know how to talk about it. And I think it's a real problem for them, because it's to me, that is the number one point of how you're going to go into the next 6 months arguing about what comes next. If you can't nail that down, if you can't make the case for it, then you already are starting on your heels effectively by arguing essentially with years of American precedent when it comes to our beliefs about foreign policy.
And there's a reason why the first 10 minutes of Patton triggers every progressive and every conservative loves it. It talks about winning and killing the enemy, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, and look, this should be something that this should be something that comes naturally to them. I understand why it doesn't, because they're not used to it. They don't have any kind of pre-script for it, and I think frankly their staff isn't used to it. But those are the things that are going to matter when it comes to making an argument to the American people. And it could be a huge difference in terms of the outcome that we see in November. If they're incapable of making that argument, Hugh, if they're incapable of advocating for this and arguing for it on the measures that they have achieved, they are going to be coming from behind the entire time, and they could end up with a 20 to 25 seat, bottom out in terms of something that's going to have to be climbed out of over the coming years. I don't want to see that. I know you don't want to see that. The country doesn't want to see that.
I think by 2032, with the new census, all will be right. I'm kind of resigned to losing the House, and we're going to have 3 impeachments, and he's not going to be removed. And history's going to say Donald Trump did what he wanted to do, and he got it done. And I'm going to ask you in the next segment.
You think it's only going to be 3.
Yeah, and maybe you're right. They got 2 a year. Every 6 months they enroll. In segment 3, I'm going to ask you about, we're in the 11th year of the Trump era. It begins with coming down the escalator. What's the most important thing in the Trump era thus far? The worst development thus far, the best of worst of Trump and the best of worst of Dems. But before we get there, right now, the Virginia map is such a nightmare. Now, I am also, by the way, I believe in redistricting. I think politicians are allowed to screw up the maps. Massachusetts has no Republicans. That's just good old-fashioned politics. But if you vote in a constitutional wall against that stuff, this ought to be struck down. But I don't think the Virginia Supreme Court has, pardon the expression, the stones to strike it down. They're afraid of this legislature.
I completely agree. And this is, in fact, what I've been saying about it. I think that the Supreme Court in Virginia, people need to understand this. It's a more political situation than the national Supreme Court. So you're going to see them react to the politics of this. They kicked the can on it before because they were worried about the outcome and they didn't want to rule on it in advance. And now they're stuck in a position where on the merits, every argument, we ran 2 pieces. We ran a piece from the lead attorney on this, and we ran a piece from Ken Cuccinelli, the former attorney general, at the Daily Wire on this. I think they have the better of the argument. I don't see any way, though, that the Supreme Court's actually going to follow that path. I think that they're going to rule politically, and that's going to end up in a situation where we are stuck with this ridiculous lobster map. The one thing that I will say is that, a number of these districts, including the lobster, by the way, didn't necessarily go as favorably for Democrats as they thought they were going to go, and that I think it could be a sign that maybe they overstepped their line a little bit. Maybe
you can't overplay your hand. So should Ron DeSantis answer? Because there are 28 seats down there, 20 are Republicans, 8 are Democrats. You go to ChatGPT and Grok and say, give me a map that wipes out the Democrats. It will give it to him. Should he?
I think he should. I think he absolutely should. Why not? I mean,
I agree.
I think I have the same attitude that you do. This is just a fact of politics. Being competitive and trying to nail this down is not something that I'm going to judge anybody for. So look, I think you should pull the trigger on it. We've seen this was an absolutely ludicrous map. It was not. I mean, when Gail Spanberger's like 10-1 seems a little extreme. Maybe let's do 9-2. and then they didn't even have the willingness to do that.
Because they're radical
I
in
just think you
Richmond.
have to pull out everything. Yes.
So I want to go with Democrat Party Delinda Est at the end of every single speech in the Senate and the House from now until November. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm coming right back with Ben Domenech. Go listen to his Big Ben podcast. I'm back with Ben Domenech. Ben, I spent some time yesterday with Molly Hemingway talking about her brand new bestseller, Alito. It's a very fine book. And she has also agreed that Justice Alito isn't going to retire. I don't know Justice Alito. All I know of Justice Thomas is he's been my guest on the radio show once. He's been a guest at Chapman Law School. I served on the combined federal campaign for the District of Columbia with him decades ago. They're both wonderful men and extraordinary people. And their jurisprudence, though I don't agree with Justice Thomas often, I understand his position about incorporation. Alito is the perfect justice. I'd like them both to retire because I don't want to gamble with the 6-member court. What do you think?
Well, personally, I would just say to you, I think it's not ideal to be able to say that two truly great justices, in terms of their careers, need to retire and need to be replaced. But I think you're correct. I mean, the window here is very small, and we have to be realistic about these things now, especially considering the fact that the Democratic Party has signaled in every way, shape, and form that they intend to pack the court as soon as possible. So I think you have to get that done. I think you have to do it as within this window, even understanding that with that comes a loss of brain heft. And a lot more to come from it. And I mean, I don't know what I've never taken the Hugh Hewitt poll about who you have in mind to replace these gentlemen. I happen to be a longtime friend and advocate for one Jim Ho, who I think.
Oh, he's a great. I think Amul Thapar checks a lot of boxes, and Justice Thomas might step down if he knew Amul Thapar was coming in. But you've got Allison Rushing. You've got a whole. I mean, there are 20. The second question, though, we have 1 minute. Molly countered with, "Well, do you want your friend Robert?" He's not my friend. I worked with him. I've known him for 40 years, but he's a colleague, and I see him occasionally. The Chief Justice should step down. He's 71. I said, absolutely not. He's a great Chief Justice. He's really a great Chief Justice. Do you want him to retire too?
No, I don't. I actually think he's managed things quite effectively. I mean, it's not. And in part, I would just suggest that the Overton window is important here. And, you want to have justices replace Alito and Thomas, who are going to be able to do the work that is needed on that court. Sometimes with the Chief Justice, you need someone who can navigate things a little bit differently. There are ramifications for that that I still think, I wish that there were more consequences for everything that happened with Dobbs. But when it comes to the chief, I think he's actually, done a good job of figuring this out.
He's brilliant. And when I narrowed it down with Molly and said, look, on race, there's nobody better than getting rid of the awarding of penalties or the awarding of benefits and punishments based on race. There's no one better 100%. On free speech. He gets this rap because of Obamacare, but that was actually correctly decided under constitutional avoidance principles. Ben Domenech, who is the Commissar of Commentary at the Daily Wire, Fox News contributor, host of the Big Ben podcast.
There? Can I request music going forward?
Yes.
I'd love some more Who in the mix. Though I am.
Oh, we'll do the Who's Next all album long. So Ben, this question is actually prompted by your discussion of W on the Big Ben pod. I agree with you. I've been along a long time. He's my favorite president as a person. He is the most decent, loving, kind, ethical Christian man. And I think I'm not even sure he made the wrong decision. I think everyone would have made the same decision on the bad knowledge he was given, but the perfect guy for 9/11. And we're coming up on the 25th year. And then we had the Obama era, and that's an era devoid of anything except sound and noise, representing nothing. The Trump era begins in 2015 with the escalator. It's ongoing. It's going to be a 15-year period of America that will be known as the Trump era. What is the best and worst development of the Trump era? It might not have anything to do with Trump.
So I think the best development of the Trump era is a reorienting that needed to happen regarding the Republican Party and the coalition that they needed to become. I think for years people had been sort of going back and forth about they're trying to make certain things work. And I think Mitt Romney really, to his credit, did his best to try to make that coalition work. Donald Trump transformed that coalition, and I think that transformation is a positive one. I think it's very good, and I think it's going to lead to more Republican successes when it comes to the presidential politics. The flip side of that is that we have a more toxic, more villainous, more vile environment when it comes to the expressions of opinions than I have ever seen in my life. And you live, I mean, you are aware of the Nixon era, so I feel like it's too much for me to say it's never happened in American history.
It's so much worse than Nixon. It's so much worse than Nixon.
You think, okay, so that actually vindicates something that I think, because I've been arguing that in Washington with some of my younger colleagues. I think it's much, much worse, and I think that the simple fact is that that's not something that can be recovered from via an election. You know, it's not going to be something where you have a cycle and you get through it. Okay, like it's just that is the aspect of the Trump era that I think is absolutely the worst. It takes normal people and it incentivizes them to be radical, to do crazy things, to say crazy things, and to hate their neighbors. And I hate all of that. But I also think that's not Donald Trump's fault. I don't think that he did any of that. I think
he surfed
that is
it.
a reaction from the left.
Now, let me talk to you about the clarity that he brought. I think the best thing that he ushered in was clarity. Everybody knows who everybody is and where they stand, whether it's Macron and Starmer or Tucker Carlson and Candace Owen, whether it is John Hickenlooper or Susan Collins. Everybody is out there in the middle with the Klieg lights on, defined by 1,000 voices, but in the end, I think essentially understood for who they are. And I don't think we're misled about anyone. What do you think about that?
I think you missed the Cold War, Hugh. I appreciated the clarity. That's where we're at. No, I think you're completely right. And look, the other thing I'll just say about this, and I mean, it's one of these areas where whenever I compliment him for it, whenever anybody compliments him for it, you get backlash for it. I appreciate having a president who's this funny. I'm in the business of journalism. I'm in the business of media. I appreciate having a president who actually is entertaining and interesting and creates news himself simply from his comments. And that's something that, I think we'll miss when he's gone, because I don't think that there's going to be anybody who's as entertaining.
Don't you really want him to do the Ruthless podcast? I did a ride-along on the Ruthless podcast once, and I said to them at the start.
Hasn't he?
Oh, I don't know, that maybe they're afraid, Carolyn and Steve are afraid, because it would be the funniest episode in the history of the internet. And I did the ride-along.
Obviously. I mean,
yes.
Look, I've known Josh and I've known Duncan for years, that they will get the best out of him. He's got to do it. I mean, I to the extent that I can help make that happen, and I did it 3 weeks ago. I can't remember which. And it's a phenomenal conversation always, and it gets the best out of you. So
but were you funny? I told them at the beginning, look, guys, I'm not funny. I've listened to your show for years, and I know what you're supposed to do when you ride along. I can't be Mary Catherine Ham or Ben Domenech. I'm not the right demo. But they were nice to me. Trump would own it.
Absolutely, and and maybe that's the follow-on career. No, look, I think that what we can appreciate about this Trump era is that he has reordered American politics in a way that I think is healthier for the Republican coalition. He's made it, I think, a stronger presidential year coalition, emphasis on presidential year. But I also think that he's someone who has, unfortunately, led to a toxicity that has made a lot of people be crazy who really need to just check themselves.
All right, you just gave me an idea, Ben.
Friends, as you and I know.
Yeah, you just gave me an idea. W, the podcast, would not be interesting. He's very nice and he's good on interviews, but he wouldn't be funny.
Yep.
Trump, the podcast, would be fabulous.
Number one, absolutely.
And all you would need to do is say, "So Roger Goodell last night. What do you think?" And then lean back, get out of the way.
Yep, exactly.
He would tell you about Roger's entire life, and he knows everyone. Then you'd go back over to Broadway. Do you have a favorite show? And you'd get a history of Broadway, and you could bounce over to, Vahidi, and he would tell you all about Vahidi. Now, he might spill more classified information.
The funniest things that he says are typically off the record, and so I think, if he actually did the podcast, I mean, wait for a live stream, because that would be insane.
Okay, you bring this up. The crazy guy on the left who was up with Al Sayed and I can't remember, Piker. Yeah. Okay, I don't know anything about this guy except he's an anti-Semitic evil person. When did he become big?
So he became big in part because he's just this guy who sort of fits a Venn diagram of different aspects of the dirtbag left, especially with the death of some of their older podcasts that went away. One of the name of one of which I can't name, but Dwayne will tell you in the break. But the thing that I think is really true about him is he is he's a perfect example of how fake the left is. This is a guy who comes from a wealthy family. He literally had a pony when he was growing up.
No.
He's not someone who is in any way. Yes, literally. You can find pictures of him writing it. And the whole point is this is a perfect example of elite capitalist children who just decide that they hate their parents, and so because of that, they're going to go out there and say a bunch of
that's the Weather Underground. That's when I was in high school, and the Weather Underground were blowing themselves up, and they were all rich kids from Greenwich Village.
100%. These are not people who are coming from the underclass and revolting against people. No, these are wealthy people who are absolutely doing this because of, I think, deep-seated psychological issues that should have been dealt with in therapy. I'm not a big believer in
start
therapy,
thinking about right now being the host of the Trump podcast, because you'd be perfect at that. You would get all the references. Ben Domenech, follow him on X at B Domenech. Listen to the Big Ben Pod, except for draft advice. Everybody loves Ben Domenech. I hope you listen, by the way, to the Big Weekend Pod, where I just jam everything we do together on Friday, plus some original content. We put it out on Friday night or early Saturday morning, the Big Weekend Pod, available wherever there are podcasts. Like and subscribe, like I hope you will do, for my YouTube channel. I hope you're watching on the Salem News Channel as well. We're now on Amazon Prime and on every major carrier all over the place. Channel 1177 on Samsung Plus. We're on Pluto TV as well. Be sure to watch Larry Elder after I'm done. Let me remind you, save some money this weekend with one call to Consumer Cellular. 800-411-4454. That's 800-411-4454. Remember, my code is Hugh. When you call 800-411-4454, use my code, Hugh, H-U-G-H. You'll get your second month free no matter what you sign up for. But I really want to stress, if you're over 50, you want to use the promo code to get your second month free. But you also want to ask, hey, I'd like that single line with unlimited talk, text, and data for just $35 a month. And they have to be 50 years or older to get that, so you got to be able to tell them your date of birth, etc. But they got the best customer service in the world. Make the call and make the switch. Takes about 20 minutes. Keep your number, keep your data. Just lower the cost of your cell phone at consumercellular.com/Hugh, consumercellular.com/Hugh, or call 1-800-411-4454. Carolyn Levitt on the White House gaggle today, announcing the trip to Islamabad, cut number 1.
The president was flexible in granting an extension of the ceasefire throughout this time. The president has decided to dispatch Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner back to Islamabad. The Iranians want to talk. They want to talk in person. And so the president is, as I've said many, many times to all of you, always willing to give diplomacy a chance. So Steve and Jared will be heading to Pakistan tomorrow to hear the Iranians out. We hope progress will be made, and we hope that positive developments will come from this meeting, and we will see. And the president, the vice president, the secretary of state will be waiting here in the United States for updates, and the vice president, I understand, is on standby and will be willing to dispatch to Pakistan if we feel it's a necessary use of his time.
And then Carolyn Libet added this, cut number 2.
President Trump has been clear from the beginning what the objectives of this mission were. The objectives of Operation Epic Fury were, of course, to significantly diminish.
And she was talking to John Roberts, significantly diminish the ability of Iran to project force. There are a lot of options left. Let's move on, though, to cut number 11. Dan Kane, chief of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, talking about tankers.
U.S. Indo-PACOM forces, in support of a Department of Justice request, interdicted the motor tanker Tiffany, which was transporting sanctioned Iranian oil. The Tiffany is a very large crude tanker, VLCC for short, and is also about the size of a U.S. aircraft carrier and capable of transporting approximately 2 million barrels of oil. At approximately 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. military forces and law enforcement forces also went to the ship via rotary wing platforms, fast-roped onto her deck, and secured her. After the ship was secured, a U.S. Navy control team embarked aboard the Tiffany, and assumed control of the ship at 4 a.m. Eastern Time on April 21st. A Navy control team is comprised of sailors led by a boarding officer that assumes control of a seized ship in order to secure the crew, the cargo, and the vessel. And disposition of that first vessel is still pending. The next
It's still pending because we got to figure out who the oil belongs to, but we can do that anywhere, and we are doing that to the Ghost Fleet, the Dark Fleet, whatever you want to call it. Don't forget Relief Factor. All right, I took it in hour number 1. I'll remind you in hour number 3. Got my 8 miles in this morning because I'm driving tomorrow, so I had to get my longer run of the week in this morning. It's not a run, it's a trundle. If you're over 10 minutes a mile, it's a trundle. But I'm feeling pretty good about that heading into the distance months of May, June, July, August, and not so much September if you want to do a race. But Relief Factor will make you feel better about every part of your life, including commuting. Right now, you might be in your car commuting. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. The starter pack for Relief Factor is $19.95. That's it, $19.95. All you have to do is call up and say, hey, give me the starter pack. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or you can find the starter pack and make the order. Again, $19.95, less than $1 for a day for the first 3 weeks that you try Relief Factor. Good long trial, 3 packets a day for the first week, 2 packets a day for the second week, and then 1 packet a day for the third week, and forever after more. In my case, more than 13 and a half years. Or you can go right to their website at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. As promised, Kristen Wagoner, President and CEO of Alliance Defending Freedom, America's preeminent religious liberty and free speech legal defense fund, joins me. Kristen, good to see you again. Congratulations. It's not even the end of the term. I'm already congratulating you. Would you tell our audience what Alliance Defending Freedom has gotten done in this term of the court? Because it's a lot.
Well, we're still working on it. We have 4 cases before the United States Supreme Court this term, and we have a victory in one of those cases. We're waiting on 3 more. The 3 we're waiting on have to do with both speech and attorneys general using the power of subpoena to harass pregnancy resource centers, as well as the right of states to be able to ensure that there are sex-based categories that protect women in sports. But the decision that we are really excited about in this moment was an 8-1 Supreme Court victory in a case called Childs, which stands for the proposition that the government doesn't have the right to tell Americans how they should think or how they should speak, and that includes in the privacy of a counseling room.
The counseling room in this case being in Colorado. Why are all the cases coming out of Colorado that drive us crazy?
Well, because Colorado is bent on enforcing its own ideology and orthodoxy on its citizens. And frankly, hopefully, I think they're thinking on the rest of the nation as well. This is our third victory at the Supreme Court in recent years against Colorado. To be more specific about what the ruling is about in the case, it involves a law that Colorado passed that said that licensed counselors who are helping children to engage in all kinds of talk therapy for different reasons, that if they're struggling with their bodies, a licensed counselor can only help that child live as the opposite sex. They can only put them on a one-way path towards transition rather than simply listen and talk as they go through the puberty process. And what we know from the science is that 90% roughly of all kids that are allowed to just pass through puberty end up living at peace with their bodies, whereas over 90% who are pushed towards social transition will become lifelong medical patients. So the court said this is blatant viewpoint discrimination and is unconstitutional.
Now, I don't expect Colorado to ever stop being crazy, but I also know that Alliance Defending Freedom will always be there. Can we go up to the Attorney General abuse of subpoena? Because this does present a real problem in blue states. And I've been giving speeches at pro-life centers forever, and they've never not been under harassment. But it seems to me, from the outside, just as an occasional guest speaker, that the level of intensity has gone up since Dobbs reversed Roe and Casey. Am I right about that?
You are right. Before we hit the subpoenas, though, I do want to point out in Colorado, there are over 20 states that have these laws in place and 100 jurisdictions. So the victory that we're seeing when these obscure, strange laws come out, they're not always as strange as you might think. There are enough. And they're deeply intrusive and violating constitutional freedoms of Americans more broadly. So we're glad to see the end of those come to pass. The same thing is true on the subpoena front, though. We do see attorneys general abusing the authority that they have without any complaint whatsoever. And force them to turn over their donor lists, as an example, their names of their employees and those kinds of things in an effort to stop donors.
Well, I wish you good well in that, because they're going to become aggressive until the Supreme Court stops them. I'd like to ask you a question that came up in the context of reading Molly Hemingway's new book, Alito, Kristen. And it's not about whether he's going to retire. Nobody knows that. It's about whether there's a free exercise clause case coming up that will squarely present Smith versus Employment Division, because Molly spends a lot of time talking about how it seems like we got a majority of the court to get rid of Smith, but we haven't teed it up yet. What do you think? Is that this term or next term? Anywhere out there that you see it happening?
Well, I know that the groups that are working in this space that understand that religious freedom, it necessitates the right to be able to think about our beliefs, but also share those beliefs, know that the Smith decision has caused havoc on those rights. And so I think you can bank on the fact that almost any time we're able to put that question before the court, we do, whether it's Alliance Defending Freedom or other public interest groups. I do think that the court will continue to have the opportunity to essentially take out the Smith test and provide a better test, or actually put meaning into what strict scrutiny means. And we're hopeful that they will do that. But as you know, it is a matter of timing, and only the Supreme Court determines when it's the right time to do that.
And Christian, I have new affiliates. They will never have heard of Alliance Defending Freedom since the top of the year. Let's remind how many partner attorneys you have, how many Blackstone fellows you have, just the scope of what ADF is.
Oh, thanks. Well, we're a global organization. We work around the world. We work in courtrooms and legislatures and international tribunals in the public square. We also train the next generation of excellent law students through the Blackstone program. We have about 5,000 allied attorneys that are in private practice working for us, and we have about 4,500 Christian ministries that also are aligned with us. And lastly, we have about 450 team members that are around the world, many in the United States, including about 100 attorneys. Our mission is to ensure that every person is able to speak the truth, to speak it and to live it. And so much of what we're facing today, those rights are implicated in a very serious way.
The easiest way to find Alliance Defending Freedom is at adflegal.org, adflegal.org. Kristen, in terms of where the court is going, where the courts are going, are you generally an optimist about the religious liberty situation in the United States? Lemon is dead, that's good. We don't have idiotic Establishment Clause cases anymore. But how about just generally this blue state, red state divide in terms of harassing people of faith?
I mean, I know that some are saying, well, you're winning these cases at the Supreme Court. And I would say, yes, that's true. We have 17 in recent years and others have Supreme Court wins too. But the fact that we're having to fight these battles speaks volumes. I also look at the future in the blue states that are passing laws to restrict these freedoms, to use the rule of law and essentially raw power to ensure that Americans can't continue to live consistent with their faith. So I don't think that this threat goes away. I think we've seen a change of power in this moment, but we have not yet seen a change of heart. And we will not rest until we ensure that all Americans have the right to speak freely and live out their faith.
Alliance Defending Freedom deserves your study and your support. Head over to adflegal.org, adflegal.org, adflegal.org. Kristen Wagner, always good to see you. Time for the Poet Laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show. It is Friday after all. That means it's time for Tarzana Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Hugh. I hope I don't look too scruffy. I'm growing my NHL playoff beard for the Anaheim Ducks. We're doing pretty well.
That won't last very long.
Thank you. Oh, look, they're playing against the best offensive team, but their goalie is like me, so that gives them a chance. But my poem is not about that. It's about something that's going to happen in the future, but should be happening now. John once wrote to Abigail, in letters often quoted, telling her the great good news of how our Congress voted. The date would be saluted, our founding father reckoned, with bells and sports and guns and games on each July the 2nd. The declaration that he signed would certainly endure, his date of celebration just a little premature. And like our second president, who on the 4th departed, I'd like sooner than later to see this party started. But here in California, the Commissar's Commission for a night of fireworks refuses their permission. And as I travel in my hood, in vain have I been hunting for flags on people's porches and buildings draped with bunting. I remember at 200, unless I'm addlepated, every coop and courthouse was already decorated. Every package, every can, and all them corporate types made sure their names and logos stood beside the stars and stripes. I must admit that I'm perplexed and my confusion's growing. I know it's only April, but let's get this party going. That's Bonfires and Illuminations by Tarzana Joe.
I love your correct reference to the vote on August 2nd and then the final vote on August 4th. But July. Did you know that they signed it in July? They signed it on August 4th. They actually lined up and signed it. We're celebrating in Put in Bay in Ohio on August 4th the fact that the signing took place then. You know, it's not really done till you put your name on it, Joe, is it?
Yeah, put that name on the old parchment or it doesn't really mean anything. You know, buy a house, start a country, whatever.
Whatever it is. A fine poem. I hope we get more patriotic poems as we get closer and closer to our 250th birthday, Joe. Poetry business going well?
Absolutely. I'm sitting here with a stack of poems ready to go.
Let's make it even higher, America. Head over to tarzanajoe.com. Find the button that says, I need a poem. Let's bury him in work. Let's make him just absolutely not leave the office, never play another game of golf, not have his heart broken by the Ducks, and not spend too much time analyzing the Browns draft last night. Thank you, Joe. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead. Again, tarzanajoe.com for today's offering. And for if you need a poem for a wedding, a farewell, a retirement, just a family get-together, an anniversary, go to tarzanajoe.com and say, I need a poem. They'll be right back at you. Thank you, Joe.